Now we're going to do vocabulary list 40, which is about people in school, people at school. And I'm also going to tell you a little deaf culture note that kind of relates to some of these signs. So we're going to start with vice president. So president is this way. It's kind of up here at your forehead. And so vice president starts there, but actually doesn't have anything to do with the sign I just showed you. It's definitely borrowed from English. The way you sign vice president is VP, but it's signed up here by your head, kind of where president is. If you do VP down here, it means video phone. So make sure VP up here in this location. When you do that, it means vice president. All right, the next sign is the sign for coach. It can also mean a dean or a boss. So you want, yeah, it's not really a C hand shape. It's open a little bit like a bent 5. And you're going to tap your shoulder, your dominant hand tapping your dominant shoulder. Coach or boss or dean. There are a few other English words that this sign kind of goes with. The next is the sign for counselor or advisor. And this sign and the next one, interpreter, will use that agent suffix that you learned before, or agent marker, sometimes people call it. And when you do this, it makes a verb into a noun, the person who does the verb, like work becomes worker, remember? So this sign, counselor or advisor, uses that agent suffix to make counsel or advise into the person who does that. So for counsel, you want to start with, I've seen for the supporting hand, the non-dominant hand, either an S hand shape or a flat hand shape. Either way, your palm is facing down. I would suggest the S, that's what I see most. And then you're going to have a squished O hand shape on your dominant hand. Remember, your dominant hand is the one that does the moving. It's the one that does the work. So you start this way, your fingers are pointing out there on your dominant hand, and you're going to take your counsel or your advice and you're going to give it out to people. Okay, so counsel, and it's often repeated, counsel or advice. So if you want to talk to your counselor or your advisor, you just you shorten the movement and then add the agent suffix to it. So counselor or advisor. Interpreter. So the sign for interpret is two F hand shapes with your palms, your fingers, your, I guess, thumb and first finger touching. And then your palms are facing each other. You're going to move your dominant hand back and forth. Now I have seen both moving back and forth as well. So that's interpret. And then to add, make it a person, interpreter. Okay, so that's somebody that you might see at school, at a school. Librarian, so you remember the sign for a library. So you can probably figure out very quickly that librarian is going to be. And then we have nurse. You want a U hand shape on your dominant hand. You're gonna basically, it's not really a flat hand shape or anything. We're not even worried about the hand. You're exposing your wrist. That's the big deal because the nurse is going to take your pulse, okay? So you're just pointing your wrist at yourself more or less with your non-dominant hand. So take that U hand shape and then you're going to tap. Tap your wrist right there. Nurse. Principal, you want an S hand shape on your non-dominant hand with your palm facing down, a P on your dominant hand. Do a little circle and touch. Principal. A psychologist is signed with that agent suffix as well. But the sign for psychology, you want two flat hand shapes. On your non-dominant hand, just kind of stick your fingers straight out in front of you like this. You want to just tip it a little bit. So tip your thumb. Well, tip your hand towards your thumb, I should say. Then you want your dominant hand to also be a flat hand shape. And you're going to go on top there and hit it this way. Now, this one is a little bit of a tricky sign. only because if you switch the palm orientation, it means bother or annoy. So just make sure that your palms are right. So if you're signing psychologist, you shouldn't see your palms at all. All right. So look at your hand as you're signing this with me and make sure that you don't see any palm at all. You could see my palms. If you look in a mirror, you could see your palms. But when you're looking at it as you're signing it, you shouldn't see any palm. So that's psychology. So psychologist. The last sign on this list, vocabulary list 40, is the sign for secretary. So this one actually, even though it's a person, doesn't have an agent suffix because I guess there's no word as secret or something that would require an agent suffix. So this just is a sign by itself without an agent suffix. And I have normally seen it as, you remember the sign for pen, right? It's kind of close to that. Instead of licking your pen this way, you're going to take your pen out from behind your ear and then write. So secretary. In the Master ASL book, it shows it with a K hand shape, which I have seen before. So just ask your deaf friend how they sign it. So that's the last vocabulary word for this vocabulary list. But I want to add just a little cultural point now that we're talking about people that you might meet in a school. In ASL, there are actually no signs for Mr., Miss, Ms., Mrs. In the deaf community because it is so tight-knit and intimate. There are no titles like that. People are just known by their first names and their name signs if they have them. Children are permitted to call adults by their first names. In English, titles like Mr. and Mrs. are used to show respect. And so in ASL, a respectful facial expression accomplishes the same purpose. So when interacting with hearing people, you may see deaf people sometimes, apply that, English habit of Mr. or Miss by simply fingerspelling it. So you may see someone refer to, your teacher as Mrs. Jones. They'll just add that little Mrs. in, even though really in deaf culture, those titles don't exist. So there's your little cultural point when we're talking about people in general and here in this vocabulary list, people at school.